So I gave a little title to the introduction, which is Watching Tristana in the Era of Me Too. And I start, though, I'll come to that at the end. I start with the question of the season, who is Luis Buñuel? If you've already attended some of the films, you may already know, but if not, permit me to take you through some of the interesting dates. So Buñuel was born with the last century, 1900, in Calanda, Aragon in Spain, and he died in 83 in Mexico City. And he remains, I would say, and there are other Spanish film historians in the room who might disagree, certainly in the world. He remains, I think, Spain's foremost director-auteur, alongside today's Pedro Almodóvar, who you may have heard of. You may know of his early surrealist work in France and Spain. I did want to mention that he also played an important role in the cinema of the Second Republic in Spain, before civil war sent him into exile in Mexico. And that's one of many huge losses to Spanish cinema when he left. So he's not just a director. He did, however, from exile, return to Franco Spain, the dictatorship that was inaugurated by civil war, as you all know, and ended with Franco's death in 75. So he returned twice to make two explosive films. I use the adjective advisedly. Viridiana, which you might be able to come back and watch on Thursday, that was in 1961. And then Tristana, our film, which is 1970. So both are films still in the heart of dictatorship in Spain. So you might wonder, why would the dictatorship allow such a controversial anti-Franco, anti-dictatorship figure back? And this has always fascinated me as a researcher and when I teach it to my students, because the answer is the cynical cultural politics of late Francoism, whereby the regime sought to present a supposedly modern and liberal face on the international stage through grand gestures like allowing the exiled director home to film. So we benefit from this because we have the films now, but as you'll be hearing on Thursday if you come back, no one in Spain, other than the censors and a few lucky film school students, could actually see Viridiana. There were good audiences for Tristana at the time, though. So before getting to the film itself, I also want to ask, who is Benito Perez Galdos, that Erifili mentioned, the author of the original short novel of 1892. So he was born in 1843 in the Canary Islands. Sorry about all these dates. It seems like you should include them when you're doing an introduction. He died in 1920 in Madrid. Galdos, if you don't know him, is a realist novelist, and in a British context, a rather kind of Anglophone context, we might call him a Spanish Dickens. He wrote historical novels called Episodios Nacionales, and Tristana forms part of a wonderful series called Novelas Contemporáneas, contemporary novels. And most of these, I think, are translated into English if you're not a Spanish speaker. They're characterised by Galdos's interest in social problems and an interest in exploring these through female characters like Tristana. They're also characterised by some experimentation with realist form, and I'm going to be linking that to Buñuel in a second. So what's the connection? Buñuel really was, actually, like Almodóvar, a bibliophile as well as a cinephile. 21 of his 32 films are literary adaptations. And he has amongst those two that are named adaptations of Galdos. So Galdos is sort of his favourite author based on how many times he adapted him. So there's Nazarín that he made in Mexico in 1959, and then Tristana that we're talking about today. As you may also know, Buñuel, the director, had great fun throwing critics and future historians off the scent with his interviews and the comments he made in his autobiography, My Last Breath, that they've got up by the bar here at the cinema. And so he made an offhand criticism about Tristana, saying, it's not one of Galdos's best. But in fact, I would argue that the film betrays a great debt to the novelist. Galdos was a progressive, liberal author, a darling of the Spanish left. On the centenary of his birth, 1943, he was celebrated by Spanish exiles of the Second Republic in Mexico, whereas in Franco Spain, that centenary couldn't be marked. So Buñuel, in choosing Galdos, is already making a political gesture. So the film, getting to the film itself, it's a co-production, Spanish, French, Italian, and this is reflected typically for a co-production in the nationalities of the principal actors, though that's lost somewhat if their voices are dubbed. It's not like we're hearing them all speak with their national accent. But nonetheless, you're going to very much recognise Catherine Deneuve as Tristana, especially as you'll have walked past numerous pictures of her in the cinema. And she's also in Belle de Georges, you probably know, 1966. There's also Italian actor Franco Nero, the love interest Horatio. And then from Spain, we have Don Lope, who is Fernando Rey. And he also is one of the stars of Viridiana. And he's a beloved collaborator of Buñuel, I would say. I think they talked about being of the same generation, even though Rey is slightly younger. And I think you might appreciate that in the film, that there was a special collaboration between them. And then I would also mention, look out for the secondary actor, supposedly secondary actor, Lola Galdos, excuse me, who plays Saturna. And that role actually inspired a subsequent film in Spain called Furtivos, or Poachers, by Borrell in 1975, all based on how powerful her performance is as Saturna in this film. So two more quick points before I'm up to time. Do look out for experimentation with film form in Tristana. So it's rather naughty, really. What he gets up to is removing things like establishing shots, and indeed removing the explanatory opening and closing shots of sequences. So sort of look out for that, because it wrong foots us, and it does things like make dreams not be marked as dreams. There's a famous example of that in the film that I don't want to give away. Also, kind of listen out for this. So Buñuel, born with the century, he's 70 when he makes this film, and he was partially deaf, at least, pretty deaf, I think, at this point. And I think he kind of engineers a bit of a deafness in us, the viewer, by not making things clear, not making it clear where certain sounds are coming from, for example. So critics have attributed typically this experimentation to his great surrealist films, especially the messing around with dreams bit, and that's fair enough. But actually you do get some similar experimentation within the pages of the realist novel by Galdos, so that's why I say he's indebted to him. So final point then is the female character Tristana and this business of watching the film today in the era of Me Too. So I first watched the film 20 years ago or so as a PhD student. And I noted that while Galdos is feminist, I think, or perhaps first wave or proto-feminist in the sympathy that he demonstrates towards his protagonist, she's confined to the domestic splays, and the novel and then the film explore this awful phrase in Spanish, which is La mujer en casa, la pierna quebrada, which the English translation, a woman's place is in the home, really doesn't get the misogynist violence. Pata quebrada is a broken or a shattered or a kind of permanently hobbled leg. So while Galdos is sympathetic to this plight, 20 years ago, I thought Buñuel was simply interested in other things. He's certainly interested in power, as you will see, in questions of monstrosity. He relocates Galdos's novel to 1929 to 35, which is the end of the Primo dictatorship and the start of the Second Republic. So he's interested in those questions of politics in this period. And I would really love to know what you think of the treatment of Tristana in the film. Please email me with any thoughts, because I've got to run off to get my train back. Look out in particular, I'd love to know in particular what you think of the presumed scene of domestic abuse in the film. So I'm talking about an elderly Lopez presumed rape of a presumed child, or certainly underage Tristana. This all occurs off screen. So we don't witness the scene, and it has been interpreted by film historians as rather clever. So there's a wonderful historian called John Hopewell who wrote about this scene. The spectator, I'm quoting him, is slyly looking forward to the scene. Brackets, whatever his judgment of Don Lope's morality. So I think, can a film, to conclude, be politically explosive if it also assumes that the spectator adopts a rather pervy, frankly, kind of masculinist complicity with a scene of abuse? I think that's difficult, but I'm going to have to leave you to decide about it. And as I say, I'd love to know your thoughts. And hopefully that will be interesting for the adaptation group afterwards. I think I've had my 10 minutes, so thank you ever so much for listening to me, and I really hope you enjoy it in different ways. Thank you.